Welcome to this week's episode of Music in the Minor League. We're glad you could join us. This week we hit the road and we're joined by Ben Garcia out of Colorado Springs, Colorado. Ben took a pretty long sabbatical from playing music and recently got back into songwriting and performing. He's been all over the country at this point. We were able to catch him back in December over at the Do-Si-Do, breakfast, barbecue, and whiskey bar in one order or another. And we had a great time watching him and hearing him, man. So we were really grateful he had the time to sit down and talk to us. Our buddy Brian Johansson, who y'all may remember from season 1 from Sugar Britches, pulled it together for us. We had a great time talking to Ben and catching up. Before we start, as always, housekeeping. If you like the show, tell your friends, put the word out on social media. It's the best way for us to get followers and the best way for us to find exposure for everybody, man. It's the whole reason we're doing this, to help our friends get some exposure, people we know, people we dig as artists, is to help people get the word out, man, because it's really hard in the independent music world to have anyone really pay attention. So if you can help with that, we'd be forever grateful. All right, next up, Ben Garcia. He'll be playing this Saturday, February 8th, with Nathaniel Riley and Patrick Deathlifts. Hopefully I didn't butcher that too bad. In Denver, Colorado at the Mercury Cafe, man. So make sure to catch him this Saturday. And then for those of us in Texas, he'll be performing at a George Strait tribute in Plano, Texas at Love and War. He'll be in Guyman, Oklahoma on February 21st at Bob's Cowboy Bar. And I guess I should say that the Unwound, which is the George Strait tribute, will be on February 22nd. I don't think I said the dates. Now you know. And there's all sorts of other stuff coming up. Just make sure to check him out. Follow him on his socials. Help get the word out, man. That's what we do. Next up, what are we up to? Well, we're taking it kind of slow. There's been more personal stuff. We are working on a live EP. We're working on like a covers EP. We got a bunch of stuff going on right now that we're just trying to do some recording and kind of regrouping and retooling and all that kind of fun stuff, man, which I guess retooling is not really a good thing because we basically are staying the same. Still the three of us, and occasionally Rebecca and Joel will jump in. So, we've been doing some more all full band shows, man. We just actually recorded a Long River session with Messiah Tamagai, you may remember from last season. We've had a lot going on. Our only show on the books right now is February 15th at Fredonia Brewing, and that is in Nacogdoches. Then in March, we're going to be hitting the road, playing some dates. We're going to be, I think, March 8th, we're at Opening Bell Coffee in Dallas, Texas. March 9th, we're going to be doing a podcast recording in Oklahoma City. And we're also going to swing by JJ's Alley for their open mic just to come out and get a foot in the door there, as we'd love to come back to OKC. On March 10th, we'll be heading up to Wichita, Kansas to play at Kirby's. Love Kirby's, man. Can't wait to hang out there. And then on March 11th, we'll be stopping by Beer is Good Brewing Company in Norman, Oklahoma. We'll be playing there from 7:30 to 9:30, part of their Tuesday music night. So come hang out and listen, man. It'd be great to see you. That does it for now. So let's get to the episode, man. Enough of us. So we're going to kick it off with one of Ben's singles. This one's called Road Song. Hope y'all dig it. See you on the other side.
See the sky. I shook off my heavy head and looked over, see your eyes. It's a long way from home, the time we've been gone. I'll tell you this, my love, it's been good for the soul. Never find our way back home. Travelers unknown, and make a home of this road. Talk going back. Jack, but I look over to you and have to ask, could you love me from sea to sea and sing these road songs with me? Oh, baby, be my Bobby McGee, and never find our way back home. Travelers unknown, and make a home of this road. Never look back. Oh no. Let's push out west, put those sunsets to rest. Buckle up, baby, let's take a deep breath and never find our way back home. Travelers unknown, and make a home of this road. We ain't never going back, baby. Oh no. Oh no.
All right, y'all, we're here with Colorado singer-songwriter Ben Garcia. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us tonight, Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, absolutely. I'm so happy you guys had me on. It's great.
Those of y'all, not in the know, this is a friend of past guest, Brian Johansson of Sugar Britches. So, bringing the community together, man. People out soliciting for us. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, he's a great man. He's a great dude for sure.
That was a fun interview.
He's my constant entertainment on Facebook to read his posts.
Right, I know.
Stir up the world. It's like it's just get the popcorn kind of post that I love. And so I'll just leave it there. How does that sound?
That's good, man.
I think I'm going to start using that phrase. Eat the popcorn posts.
And plus, he already has an episode. We don't need to talk much about him.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're just like, it's part of you get your 30 seconds of mention if you go out and solicit. So if you bring us something, you get an extra 30 seconds on another episode.
Yeah. That's great.
Every commission, all the commissions.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It's all right, man. Well, I guess to kick it off, we always start out, man. Like, what got you into playing music? I mean, I've read some about you online, but I figure you have a better way of telling the story than I do. So do it.
Yeah, man. I come from a big family of readers, and my parents were big readers. My brother was a big reader, and I just loved music more than reading. So when you're around readers that they obsess about reading every night, that was me with music. So from a really young age, I just felt that rhythm of music and felt that connection and just dived into everything. Like I was the nerd reading liner notes, on every album. I wanted to know who produced it, who did what. And then I just started getting into music and playing guitar. I come from a big family that we'd have these picnics and everybody played guitar and you had to hang. And I had uncles that were great guitar players. And I was like, some point I'm going to start. So I started playing guitar and then getting into music and then just had this vision of I wanted to be in bands. And, as we were just joking about, you don't know what to do with with your hands. Sometimes you don't know what to do with your music either when you're starting off, like who you're going to play with, who's, when you're this nerd that shows up to a band practice reciting stuff from the liner notes, nobody really wants to hang out with too much. They just want to make music. So I kind of knew all these people where I grew up in Boulder that were in bands, and I like the pure luck. There was a punk band kind of having a show, and the guitarist quit like a week before, and I got a call and they're like, "Hey, can you fill in?" And I was like, "Here it comes," and it was like the best show ever for being 13 or 14, whatever I was. That there's a mosh pit, there's kids jumping off the stage, people are just having a great time, and it was pure heroin. It was like, get a vein and give me a needle, because that when you play and people are having fun, as I'm sure you guys know, it means everything. When people are cutting loose and having it. So from there, I just got in this music scene in Boulder that I got so lucky in. That this high school I went to, a lot of people have gone into other parts of media and arts, that they've had a lot of luck in Hollywood and in music and everywhere else. In this high school, there was just this mecca of us that were in it, and got super lucky and started playing shows. And then out of that show, became really good friends with the bass player, and he ended up becoming a really good friend. We formed another band. I was in another band at that time and kind of made this mega band in Boulder, and it worked out great, and started playing shows everywhere throughout Colorado at 15. So that was really how I got started.
Oh, cool.
Well, you've been doing this a while. You were old hat.
What's that? Yeah, I know. It was wild, and it was crazy from there. So then we played, and then we ended up playing and having great shows, and then I left for college, played for college, and I played in college, had a great time, and kind of messed up. I did a post on this so people can see on Instagram too. I was playing with this fantastic female singer, and that's how I started finding kind of country music at that time, was playing with her and just playing these bars, and I didn't realize it was a showcase at the time. We were playing in Denver, and this was the 90s, right, when Nashville was the enemy. The record labels were the enemy, and we had somebody approach us to buy the songs we were playing, and I did the best 90s thing you could do, which was told them to pound sand with a few vulgarities, that I wasn't going to sell a song. And I'm pretty sure that cut me off of music for that Denver market for a long time, because it was a big showcase in a club, and I made quite a scene about it. Ooh. So then I just it was good. I mean, it was fun, but I don't know if I'd ever suggest that to somebody if somebody approaches you to buy your music.
Hey, we all learn lessons.
At 19 was not a smart move. Yeah. So I from there, like in this crazy music scene, some people called me and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna have this jam on a Saturday night. Will you come over?" And that's how I met that female singer. Is there was a bunch of jazz musicians and I played mandolin, and I met a kid there. So fast forward, when I blew that deal with those Nashville executives, we ended up making a jam band, because that's when Fish and Widespread Panic were really big. Mm-hmm. And I loved Panic. I went and saw them everywhere in the world or in the country, and I loved what they were doing, and did that, and then just kind of hung it up, and then ended up meeting my wife, and then took a big break from music. So my being in music right now is almost a pure accident of what happened. I was completely done with music, and then I had some events happen and the stars aligned, and I'm where I'm at now with my music career, which in a short amount of time has blown up pretty big for what I think. From a year ago, I was doing nothing with music to where I'm at now. So
yeah, I know you have a lot of a lot of the tour dates you have are like playing really good rooms, and you've had a bunch of stuff come up.
So blessed. I'm not a very religious person, but a pretty spiritual person, and some spiritual things have definitely lined up for this blessing I'm in right now with music and what's happening, and I also think, when you're 46, you also know what to look out for in the music industry too, and what not to, if you have some radars up that I think prevent some things from taking you some bad decisions. Also, it's,
and you also have that, you've lived life long enough to kind of know where to focus your energies, and a lot of some of the trappings of just making a mistake, getting too drunk for you get on stage or doing anything like that, or being in Colorado,
man, I've been there. Yeah.
Being too high on stage. And
I've been there. My buddy Wes, he gave me the best advice a year ago when I was starting up again. He's like, when you play a show, have one beer. That's it. It's either the merch table or on stage, but you're cut off, because you're going to make a mistake past there. And that's the best advice I've ever gotten about playing shows. Because when I was in my 20s playing shows, it was like, take this here, do this, drink this, do miscellaneous with this, and you're having a great time. And then you realize you're just an asshole up there blabbing and misplaying, and clubs see that, they see your work ethic because you're fucked up. up, and that doesn't do good for anybody, when you're up there in your own world.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that before. Getting to the point, I always call it like piloting the machine where you're not actually doing it. Feels like you're like, okay, hand, this is a C right here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Please play it right now. And it's like, oh, I'm not in control of this. But
yeah. Or like you just completely end off in some thought process that you've just wandered off to, and so that happens too. But yeah, that's the good rule. I'd say a thumb that I got was if you're going to drink and you're playing a show, is just either have that beer on stage or at the merch table or split it, because that's where fights happen with other people. That's when arguments come. There's so many things I'm sure you guys have seen in your touring too that just it's all around alcohol or drugs, at that point, or somebody's often.
Sometimes people are just dicks. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's face it, man. To be in the music right now, your ego has to be beyond belief to keep up with social media and to keep up with everything that's in this industry now compared to 20 years ago with it. I mean, that feeds that ego machine that when you get to a show, if you're not on top of it, you're blowing the whole thing, and then you add whiskey or something to it. It doesn't do well to anybody else,
I like this. I like that we kind of like started out with like you came back with a work ethic, like.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah. I mean, I blew it the last time I was in it. It was not an accident of what I was going to do this time. It was the last time was. I mean, I've been playing bars since I was 15. They leave the back door cracked with an amp to sneak me in. I mean, I hung all this up before I was 21 playing bars. So I mean, when you're getting beer at 20 or 19, like you're going to take it all as you can.
Oh yeah.
But that comes with a lack of maturity too. And so, but yeah, this one was very focused on goals, things I wanted to meet, things I wanted to do, and steps I wanted to take with it, knowing that if it didn't work, it wasn't because of lack of effort. It was just that people just don't like your music. That's just the reality. That's just, that's the interesting thing with these tours coming up is it's going to be the measure to me is if people like my music or they like me, right? That's going to be the bigger difference. Because when you're playing at home, everybody that's coming to see you, your buddies, and they already know you're a cool dude or whatever to hang out with. But to get butts and seats is a whole other, and dancing is a whole other thing. I'm sure, as you guys know, when you start branching out,
Oh yeah, and then even at home, it's normally like, hey, can you get us here? Can you do this? And it's like,
oh yeah,
y'all were great tonight. Hey, who do we talk to about playing this venue? And you're kind of like, oh, did you dig it? And then when you have people come up out of town, it's like, all right, cool. Well, these people actually were listening and, gave a damn. So it's always nice. It's going to get that out of town validation.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of an adrenaline rush, right? Like you're stepping into the arena, you're the matador out there as a bull, with the bullfighter.
Yeah.
You're either going to bomb or hold on to something, And I don't know about you guys, but I was thinking if you make one person's night, that night you're playing on a Friday night, they've had a shitty week, everything's gone wrong, and they get to have a beer and dance and just cut loose. That's what it's for. That's when it's good, and that's what it makes. Or that couple that's had a whole week of fighting and they're out there dancing to one of your songs, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like I said, music is just pure heroin if you're addicted to it, because anything that happens around it, you just get even more addicted to it. It's a beautiful thing to see. So it's a little different going from being a teenager and playing mosh pits to playing acoustic sets in college than playing in jam bands to being in hockey talks and bars, that you gotta, I've learned down in Texas, if they don't like your song, they won't clap. They're not polite. If you play your shit song, they're not clapping. So I've found that out the hard way,
Thanks, Texas. Y'all are so rude.
There's a lot if you do stuff people don't like.
Man,
okay.
Yeah, but you know what? It's different than Colorado because you guys have so many artists down there coming through, right? Like Colorado doesn't get shows every night of the week, and especially when like Red Rocks is going on the weekends, it's primarily so. Texas has this mecca of music coming every week that they know what's good or not good, And as a performer, I'd rather have somebody not clap and go, yeah, that one sucks. Throw it out. And then when you clap, you're like, okay, now I can get into this one a little bit more.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good one. Especially when you're trying out new stuff, it's like, all right, what do y'all think of this?
Yeah.
And you notice like 2 or 3 times you play it, and everyone's just like, it's like, okay, we gotta go back and change this one a bit, maybe add something, pick it up, move something around.
Add something in there. Yeah.
And if it still doesn't work, then it's gotta go.
Yeah.
That's always the worst.
It's the worst.
Yeah, gotta go.
It's those. I don't know if you guys have had this, but like you'll be working on a song to get ready to record it, and it's just not coming together, and it just becomes that redheaded stepchild you don't even want to see ever again because it's just driven you crazy to try to figure out. It's just you get those hangers that won't go away. And so.
And then fortunately, a couple times you'll find them years later and be like, okay, now that I'm not caught up in it, like this could actually be fixed.
Yeah. Did you guys, like your guys' my favorite song of your guys is 12 Hours, right? From Richmond. Like, I just think that's a fantastic tune. Did that one come easy for you guys, or was that a 5-minute write or a 20-minute write? What was that one?
I'd say probably overall, that one had a little bit of time. It started out a far more positive song.
Right.
So,
but it started in a hotel room, right? So it came pretty fast.
We here in Baytown, we live on the east side of Houston. It's a big refinery town. So you have all these kids who come in and they're just like 25 working there, making ungodly amounts of money. Normally their wife is back home somewhere. So they're out here just partying, fucking whoever will let them. And, until their wife comes to the extended stay motel for a weekend. Then they got to pull it together. And I was we were in Atlanta and staying at another place like that. And talking to a dude there. And I was like, you know what, man, I'm going to write that. And I started way more like, oh, I miss you, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, let's tell the real story of this. Like, I've been around this. Like, I'm not necessarily happy to be here. I'm not, I'm mostly working shutdowns, and the days I'm off, it's like, I'm just going to do whatever. And you'd be pissed and hate me if you knew what I was doing.
Right.
But I also miss you, and I would rather be home. Right.
Yeah. The check's coming home, Yeah.
I'm not doing this because I hate you. I'm doing it because there's nothing else I have to do.
Right.
Boredom gets you in a lot of trouble.
Those rigging jobs, right? I mean, you're making a ton of money, but you're risking a finger. You're risking a hand, you're risking a lot on it. I mean, they're getting paid for that money for a reason, but it's, and so, we watched this documentary on this kid. He was working in the mines in Virginia, and he was working and making a ton of money. He had a brand new truck, and the boss of the mine told him, he's like, you're not going to break this mine. It'll break you before you break it. And the dude ended up getting black lung by the time he was 30 and done, and that's the thing with those jobs is they're so risky.
Yeah. And a lot of those kids go through, blow the money and do all this. And then, when it kind of dries up for a little bit, it's like, so I had a buddy that was a singer-songwriter that was smart about it. He's like, I work for 6 months. I put all that money back. I take 6 months off the tour, record, do whatever. And he goes, I know this fall that they'll pick back up and I'll do it again for 6 months, take off. I think he did that for almost 10 years. And it was,
no kidding.
Yeah, he just didn't blow the money. And he's like, if I make enough, as I get more popular, I'm not even blowing the money in savings because I'm making enough playing to pay for gas and places to stay and things like that. So it was a smart idea, man, but that's the very big exception to the rule.
Oh yeah. It's not everything in my business mind, when you look at music, the music industry, you're like, why would you even get into it? It's just it's a struggle as an artist, but then somebody that's gone to business school, you're like, where does this make sense? I was thinking about that the other day when everybody was popping their numbers off of streams, and everybody had great numbers this year, and you're like, somebody else is making money than the artist. Mm-hmm. This is some legit corruption right here of this market, because millions and millions of streams are going out, and now that I'm on the back end of it again, it's like, holy cow, that's a lot of people listening, a lot of advertising being driven to them, a lot of AI that people don't realize what those hosts are doing, but then somebody's making money, and it's not the artist going down the road in a van.
No, it is not.
Especially places like Spotify, and Spotify especially, doing everything they can to demonetize everyone they can, except the biggest bands. Which always, in transparency, our podcast is hosted by Spotify Podcast. But
exactly.
But it's free, and as long as it's the only free service out there. So we don't have to have ads in this. So it's once they start charging us, we'll move to a different platform. But for the time being,
I mean, it's a great model. I mean, you got to give them credit, right? I mean, it's a great model to put music out there you may never hear. I don't know about you guys, but I've on my playlist and things I listen to, there's stuff I never would have heard of.
Right.
And I mean, for me, the market that really does that more is Sirius XM. I mean, I think they do a better job of sharing new music than Spotify. But Spotify, for somebody brand new, I mean, we were all, we're all playing shows now, but at one point we were all 12 years old trying to find new music.
Oh yeah.
And the fact that you can get on there and say, if you were into blues, you could put Robert Johnson in there, right? Or, name them, Lightning Hopkins, and pull up everything around Lightning Hopkins that you wanted to listen to that you never hear before. I mean, that's a great great model, you know?
Yeah, and really, like I always tell a lot of people early on, I remember early in the 2000s, like even in like mid 2000s, like 2005, 2006, that most of the time, if you were an independent band, you wanted music on any of these services, you had to pay them. Like, oh, you want some plays? You want mp3.com to have this? You want like this internet radio station? Give us $10 and we'll play your song this many times. And it's like, at least most of the streaming services are free, but I think just in the last year is when Spotify's just kind of become like just a wretched company that's just like, okay, we're not going to give anything to anyone. We're making our best profit yet. So it's kind of
I mean, you guys would know better than me. You're more in it, but it'd be interesting to know, I mean, who owns that company and who owns a record label, is the interesting thing to talk about, and vice versa. That's who's in, like, I think it's pretty obvious everybody's starting to call BS on it. I mean, Charlie Crockett just released that Hey Mr. Nashville song, right? I mean, that's pretty obvious of the feelings the artists are starting to get back towards that industry, and it's gonna be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, it's kind of what happens with was it the owner of Spotify's Daniel Ek, the CEO, he's the creator too. And then, they were smart in the fact they got labels to write a deal with them, giving them priority payment, but also kind of a discount. So it's rough, man. Because I know people who are like, were major label artists that like it destroyed their catalog, like, just no money coming out of it. Because it's like, cool, or there was some wording in there, and, future formats. And it's like, cool, we had no say in our songs we're getting checks for $35 instead of $3,500 a month. And, it sucks.
Let's be honest, though, it's just a new way to, get the artist, because there's always been a way to get the artist.
It's never been good.
It's never been artist friendly.
No, I mean, you can go back any time and look at it. But the thing that I think is scary now, if you were a young artist, the money they front you, but then the interest charged on it. I mean, like you read through some of those contracts those kids are signing, like they have to sell so many tickets to be paid out, but they're also paying for, they're paying for food for everybody there. They're paying for everything.
Exactly.
And then that last day, they'll discount tickets and those don't count towards that commission, back on that, and then that goes into a pool of interest. That's a lot of money for if you're getting started to be in front of you, but then how much you owe on the backside,
Right.
That's one thing about, the perpetuation recently of, home dolls and home recording equipment being, pretty much studio quality. It's like, if you really take the time to learn and willing to have a few, 6 months to a year that you're doing, even if you're recording with someone else on the side, if you start really trying at home, you're like, okay, I can get this pretty easy and have comparable recordings, as opposed, granted, a few of our friends and myself, like I grew up doing audio engineering for work. So it helped there, I was like, oh, okay, I can make my way around, but when
you first recorded, did you do it on a tape to tape too? Were you on a reel, or what? Did you do 4-track? What was your?
I never. When I was a little kid, I had the Tascam like 4-track with cassettes, and then the first real one I had was probably like we had some hard drive like digital consoles that you like carry around, like the big Tascam 32-track. Like, all right, we're gonna bring it here and we're gonna plug in and we're gonna record these tracks and then bounce them down and then record stuff. And that was really how we got our big start. Of course, we used to also, a lot of that too is I had access to, because again, I worked for a university and had access to these recorders because we would record like court proceedings. There'd be like 18 mics coming into the board and we would
record
it. And it's like, we would do that like 3 times a semester. And then otherwise they'd be like, all right, let's take this home this weekend and, we'll plug in all the drums and we'll plug in this and we'll just go to town and record like a demo. It's one of those things, if anyone ever found that and pulled up, it would be hilarious to open that hard drive where 1 minute you have like a court case and the very next folder is like some like...
You guys jamming out.
Yeah, some punk band going like... And we did like Friends records that way and all sorts of stuff. But
yeah. Well, so much of that time was, you look at like, I think when Dr. Dre made Chronic, they were doing that at late night recording sessions and sneaking in. I remember the whole story, but I think like him and Snoop were breaking into studios to record those, and look at the return they got on it, it just killer album,
That's probably the best way. That's how all those dudes made names, man. Like a lot of those producers, especially in the 90s and stuff, was the assistant, like the dude who's the intern, but it's like, hey man, I can get us rate like a 10% rate if we come in from like midnight to 6 a.m. and I'll engineer it, dude. And the next thing you know, it blows up and it's like, yeah, I'm a producer, dude. Like, that's what I do.
There's a lot of people. Yeah. We were talking about that today when we were talking on the phone. That, I almost think what's going on now with music, a lot of that came from that grunge scene in the 90s, because you were the same age, and that 90s scene, if you had long hair and could put on a flannel, you were getting backed so quick, to go on tour, and they would grab anything, because I was thinking about it. I was like, artists today are getting in and out so fast because of TikTok, right? And different things, that social media that brings them in and spits them out. But that corporate record labels in the 90s were worse of what they did to people in their music.
Oh, yeah. We were just listening this last week. We ran up to Little Rock and back, and we listened to Steve Gorman's book, the Hard to Handle. It's something about like what Rick Rubin did to him on their first on Shake Your Money Maker. They got like he got their songwriting royalties. Like he totally took them for everything.
The napkin deal. That's the napkin deal in that book. That it came back to bite him in the butt. And so
which is funny, because he made the mistake of letting their contract lapse. They're like, well, if you want Southern Harmony, you gotta give us royalties backdated on that album, and here's what the royalty rate will be. Give us all of our songwriting back. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and they did that album right. I mean, you were talking about that's in my top 10 of all albums of ever time ever made. It's just because I'm a nerd, probably like you guys with music and things, but Mark Ford made that album. I don't care what anybody says. That's just my opinion. Mark Ford on that was in his prime. I mean, like that solo on Sometimes Salvation is Ford. Yeah. It's not Chris, and what a brilliant songwriter. And, I think Mark Ford's underestimated in a lot of ways. When he did Bingham's album, he produced Brian Bingham's first album and blew it out of the water because of that producing that he's capable of doing. And a brilliant musician and a brilliant mind,
There was a lot on that record that I thought was smart, like the Ryan Bingham, because it was like he kept it loose. Like there were points, you hear him like talking. And to me, it got that whole like I'm the rodeo guy making a country record. We're still like, we're just hanging around like the intro to even like the intro to South Side of Heaven. They're all just kind of like, and you hear kind of the noise in the background. It made like a good vibe to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's, that I saw them on that tour, and I met Ryan right before all that blew up. We met him down in San Marcos, and they had filmed the movie, and he was getting ready for it, and they brought him in, and it was interesting to watch that blow up, that album, because it hadn't been released yet, and it's a phenomenal album. You can't, Meet You on the Other Side, all those songs that are on there are so well produced, and like you said, it's so West Texas, it's so good, but it's got so much LA where they recorded in it. Yeah. It's just a perfect blend of harmonies and solos, and it's just a brilliant album to have. And it's set Ryan up for a great career. Man.
There's like I have albums full of bangers. Like was it Hard Times? Like I said, there's like some really good songs. It was one of those things where at first I was like, I think I heard the.
I'm sure.
I'll say I think I heard the Wrestler soundtrack first.
Sorry, no, I had a delay there. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think I heard the Wrestler soundtrack first, and it was like when I finally got that, I was like, it's cool, man. Like that was an okay song. Then I heard that record, and I was just like, oh shit, like that's.
Oh yeah. And I think he had recorded those songs a couple times before that on some self-releases, and then Mark got a hold of it, and they got on it, and it just was a phenomenal album,
Oh yeah. I was trying to find it. Was harsh. I couldn't remember.
Well, so I'm curious because you guys seem to be talking about like the production of records. Do you feel like having all that time in between 21 and now like gave you a greater appreciation for how to make music?
That's a great question, Kim. I think to make and write music is one thing. I think for me, what it's been on this process of when I first went in the studio in February or March, I can't remember, was session players challenging me, to be like, you're writing right, but are you really thinking about what you're writing, And I think at 46, you can take that advice and that challenge a lot better than at 20. At 20, you think your shit doesn't stink and you know everything. At 46, you're willing to listen a little bit more, and I've been lucky on these songs that have come out. The players on there are just phenomenal players, that actually know what they're talking about. And I had the ability to hear what they were saying and ideas they had, and, to put chords in a solo compared to how I wrote it, and I've just gone into this like complete geek mode where I'm like, I can't believe I'm sitting here playing with a pedal steel player. Like I can't believe I'm sitting here playing with a fiddle player, like when West is playing. Like it's beyond a pipe dream. So yeah, I think it does that when you're in appreciation of writing compared to like, I think you don't have any desperation of what you're writing to try to see if somebody likes you. You don't give a shit at 46, like, what's coming. You're on the back 40, there's a little bit of changes, and I'm sure you guys know this too. You're changing a little bit of lyrics of what I want to do compared to I know what's done, and I know, I think that changes it quite a bit too, but I mean, I was thinking about like, if you wrote a song at 20, you max out of how long you can play that song, right? At 40 years old, you can't sing a pop song, at 40, and it's not the same to the audience.
Yeah, those songs don't always age well. Those lyrics don't always age well.
Right. Like that song I have, Road Song, that's doing so well right now, was literally written about, I wrote it for my wife of like, I'm going to go back into music. I'm going to travel. I'm going to be playing this again. But I wrote it following Jack Kerouac's book, The Road, which is this journey of life. But there's so many metaphors in The Road that Kerouac wrote about that I just took that and imprinted my feelings that I was trying to express to my wife about wanting to go on the road again and travel and play songs, and I don't think that would have happened at 20. You can't read The Road at 20. It doesn't mean the same thing, and so poetry ages well, books age well, but I don't know if music does when it's written about an age and a time frame you're in. I mean, let's face it, like there can't be a 45-year-old dude saying, I'm mad at my parents, they grounded me and locked me in my room. It doesn't go well when you got gray hair coming in the beard. It just doesn't. It's like getting a Sesame Street tattoo and wanting everybody to appreciate it when you're 45. But
yeah, I don't think it's going to stop any of those pop punk bands from trying to make, do those reunion tours later. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I mean, you look at like Blink-182, like a great career, and that hook they did when they did it was so good and people loved it. But I don't know. I mean, I think you're chasing a new audience at that point, maybe in an age group that you're wanting to get that demographic to look at your songs and maybe feel the same thing, But yeah, producing, back to your question, the producing side of going back in the studio was a lot different because I'd been in the studio when I was in my teens, but that was with a band, right? So the biggest challenge I had was you're writing with the band when you're in your teenagers, you go in the studio, we would nail out 12 songs in 6 hours because that's all we could afford for studio time, right? I mean, it was the war tanks going in there to play as hard as you can. Compared to now, I'd had these songs that I'd written, gone in the studios, and there's session players in that are challenging. I go, no, that's the wrong key, that's the wrong change, those things. And you practice them and rehearse to go in. And that ability to listen to them, I think, makes better music because it adds diversity to that music. Their backgrounds in there, their knowledge of what's to plays in there, and you got to listen to it, And the way I approached all the players on the album, who I think are just phenomenal players, is they were all session players. So they'd ask like, hey, what should I play? And I just told them, I'll play what your heart hears the first time. When you listen to it the first time, whatever your heart hears, take that instrument and play to it. And knock on wood, it's been a great recipe for fantastic tunes, that don't sound like they were just chopped up a ton. I mean, they're just playing what they hear. I mean, we may have to tweak one or two things, or like, hey, can you redo this? But majority of those songs that I've released were 2 takes with session players, that they came in and they're badasses. They're great players. I mean, so to me, they're the true executives of the music industry because they know they've seen it all and they've played with everybody, Yeah. So
I think that sounds like maybe like a t-shirt like slogan you should have in your merch.
Yeah.
Play what your heart hears the first time. I like that. That's really good advice.
It's the truth, man, because you don't want to be the dictator out there telling them where to play. I don't play fiddle. I don't play pedal steel. I mean, I think knowing how to stay in your lane's great advice for any young artist coming out. I mean, it's, I don't, what their heart hears is what their soul's going to play in those tunes, right? Like if you start getting them to struggle with their soul, your music's empty. You want to hear it, and that's the hope, is that somebody's listening to your song and thinks, Chris Robinson, we're talking about the Crows. Chris Robinson once gave this talk where he was talking, he goes, it's the circle of music, right? Like you're a young kid, you're listening to music and you start playing in bands and you play that show and there's that little kid in the front row that's watching you, and then he starts playing music. That's the continuum of rock and roll. That's the continuum of all this. No matter what genre you're in right now, it's the continuation of rock and roll. I mean, Chuck Berry's the one who changed everything for everybody. I mean, and Elvis and all those guys, that all goes back, and we'll do this circle circle of music continuously, of people finding it, reorganizing it. And I think that's what, if you keep your music in where it can touch somebody's soul, there's a kid in the front row that's like, you know what, I'm going to play guitar and be up here, you know, and that's what keeps it going, you know, if you have that soul in it.
Well, that's the important thing to me too, because, you know, I'm admittedly not I don't really care much for the Beatles, but I love like 100 bands that when they saw them on, you know, TV were just like, I'm going to get a guitar and I want to do that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, you know, I'm internally indebted to them because so many bands I love were like, yeah, I want to do that. Or same thing with like the Ramones. It's like, we saw them and I went out and bought a guitar the next day because I'm like, I can do that. And it's like all these people who were just like, this is the band that made like 100 bands, you know? I think
the Beatles are a struggle though, right? You're right. As a listener, the Beatles are a huge struggle because there's some of it you just want to rip your hair out so bad. And then there's some of it's so good that you're like, God, I want to like it. And I love it, you know, and when you're at that age. But I was an early Beatles fan. And then when I found the Rolling Stones, that's what changed it for me. Because I thought somebody's playing music. There's these boys in the gutter that are living it. You know, they're in the shit playing it, you know, and Jagger and Keith Richards for me were just absolutely, I mean, it's, if somebody's seen me in show, my walk-on song is Ventilator Blues, because that's, to me, is the Stones tied everything in rock and roll together. They just didn't give a shit, you know, they just did not give a shit at all. And they were going to play the blues the way they heard it, you know, and to me, that's, I think more came out of the Stones in rock and roll than the Beatles, but the Beatles get a lot of credit because how popular they were at the beginning. You know what I mean? Like the Dead, right? They're the Warlocks because they want to be the Beatles.
Right.
But then they get mixed up in it, you know, and it doesn't work. And then, but I don't know. What do you think? Who do you think had a bigger influence, the Stones or the Beatles?
I would definitely say, I think for our generation, it was definitely the Stones. I think a lot of people, you know, because anything out there that was like more of the dudes just really started playing like in the late 70s were more of the, like, oh, the Beatles. But I mean, when you go through, we've been listening to a ton, that's what we do when we're on tour. We listen to a ton of like, usually rock autobiographies or oral histories. And I mean, you hear way more people like from, you know, LA punk scene on up talking about how, you know, there was a danger to the Stones. So even like a lot of these dudes in like early punk, not the three bar chords and screaming, like the dudes like early on, like X and, you know, the Blasters, like a lot of those early LA bands were just like, like we loved country, we loved the Stones because the Stones were dipping their toe into that and they seemed dangerous like we wanted to be. Where the Beatles were, you know, a pop band that they wrote their own songs and did stuff, but it got people stoked. But it was just like,
but it was pop, it wasn't rock and roll.
Yeah, your parents would listen to the Beatles with you. It's like the Stones were like, oh, like those guys are the,
that's your older brother's music.
And they're rolling through, you know, Muscle Shoals and all that stuff. Like they're doing some pretty wild stuff and going all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, they got arrested, I think, on that, when they went to Muscle Shoals, I think they got arrested in Alabama because people thought they were nude women in the pool. And it was the Stones out there with long hair. Isn't that the story? I don't remember, but like,
that's great.
I always thought with the Beatles, like, you watch Hard Day's Night, right? Like Dylan gave them weed, you know, Bob Dylan taught them how to smoke weed. They never smoked weed. And they're goofy and they're going around on skis and they're doing all this shit. And then you watch the Stones where it's like Keith Richards pulling a handle of Jack Daniels before he goes on stage. You're like, yes, that's
that's the dude,
right? Like
the sick open G riffs. It's like,
and he's playing Little Walter, you know, and you're like, yes, that's where I want to be. You know, that's where I want to be in it. You know,
see, that was kind of a funny thing. I read Graham Nash's autobiography recently, and it was one of those things where I always never really, you know, coming from again our point, you're like, like all these British kids like getting really into blues and stuff like that, like they're British kids, and then you hear his book and stuff about like, we're living in like bombed out neighborhoods post World War II, and it was like that music spoke to us because, like you said, I grew up playing with like unspent munitions laying in the street. It's like, things were really fucking bad there. So you understand how they got it. And these seemed like dudes who came from a pretty tough English town and were just like, let's rock. Like we got a lot of pin up stuff there.
Yeah, I thought that as a music fan, right? Because to be an artist, you have to be a fan of music first, right? Yeah. Like if you lose track of that, you're done. Like the minute you stop thinking somebody else makes great music. But I thought sociologically it was interesting that, you know, look at how much great music came out of Vietnam, right? Like Vietnam happens and, you know, Nash and you have Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, you have the Dead, you have Janis Joplin, you have all of these people, you know, all the Jefferson Starship, all these bands playing great music. And when we got in this conflict in the Middle East, you the United States, I thought we'd have more music about the war going on than we've had, and it's been a really limited amount of art that's come out of 20 years of war. That's interesting to think about as a music fan. It's been really, really limited to, like Hayes, Hayes Carl did Yo-Yo, there's been a couple tunes that have come out about, being in war, but really limited, that it's an interesting time to watch that reflection point in art and music too. And I may just be blind to it, not hearing it, but it's not like it was.
No, it's definitely only bands that I think that's become like, as the industry's kind of become what it is, it's become a deterrent. Like if you're not already an established band and you start getting on any sort of political rants and things like that, you're kind of like, and never mind, you're going to stir the pot. We're not going to invest in you because we don't know we may not get a return on investment. And it's because even for the record labels, as much as you talk shit, like they've lost a lot of money over the years because it's like you don't know what's, and like you said with TikTok and everything, it could be people's popularity could be done in a matter of days.
Yeah. Well, think about, I get for the labels, this last year of recording, I funded that all myself, right? Like, and that's minor league music. That's not major league, for me, but like to bring on an artist and get studio space, get session players in there to get the technology to drive that out, to print an album, to buy somebody a bus and put them out on tour. Like I've said this a million times that I think the public doesn't think about sometimes with artists is there's lawyers, there's accountants, there's bankers, there's human resources. There's people putting up lighting. To go see a show at $70, there's a lot more money being fronted than that, than just that $70 ticket, for those people fronting those tours.
There's only 5 guys. How does it cost this much? It's like when you see the 30 guys putting up lights and running the board and bringing out guitars and driving. Yeah, that stuff gets you fast. And I think it's kind of the reason where I get most excited these days about a lot of independent music, mostly because you can tell it's dudes playing it. Where a lot of the major label bands now, it's like, no, we're just going to get this. I don't believe, I might be wrong, but I know a lot of these artists, it's like they're going in, they're like, yeah, go ahead and play. And then they're just pulling in like triggered quantized drums. And, you play one take. It's like, you played your take and we're just going to fix it all in post and you're fine. There it is.
Right. Yeah.
What does your bass sound like?
It's
cool. We can.
What's that?
I said they're basically like, what does your bass sound like? Cool. We're gonna put that into our electronic bass maker thing, and it's your tone, but it's like, nope, we're hitting this right on the beat, and it's not as because they can't spend the money on time anymore. You're hearing going off that Black Crowes book, like, we set up for 6 weeks in the studio. There's nobody doing that anymore. Right?
No, God, no. And they sent him to Central America halfway through that album, and Chris is in his element, going with, the book talks about that he packs a pair of pants and a t-shirt to go to South America for a series, to front that, is an amazing cost too. And then the post-production, nothing in post I found that out this year is post is way more expensive than pre, right? To record's the cheapest part. Post is where it's
you're paying by the hour for somebody to take a really long time to listen to your album and make it pretty.
Yeah. And that's already such a nerve-wracking of what you think's going to happen. I'm sure you guys have been through this, of songs you think that are going to be huge that nobody listens to and nobody likes, and you put all your heart into that, and the one you cut in 2 minutes is, or simply on its way, but
there's no way anyone's going to like this one. It's like, son of a bitch, that's the one.
Yeah.
That's the song.
Yeah. And it's it's definitely an interesting thing with reactions to songs and what people do. I played this show this August, and it was to a young audience, and this one song I have, they're all 18-year-olds. It was 300 18-year-olds in the audience, and that was a new thing for me. I have daughters that are in that age group, and the song I have is talking about, like, it goes, these summer days let us fall for love, and these summer nights let us fall in love, right? And that was this like reflective thing of getting older and thinking about falling in love. You meet somebody during the day and you fall in love at night, right? Yeah. Majority of people fall in love at night, And then I was like, this girl in the audience, I was like, has anybody here ever fallen in love? She's like, nope, I've had my heart broke every summer. I was like, Debbie Downer moment. But I was like, what do you say? Like, that's her emotions. That's what she feels, you know? And you're just, like, I learned never to do that in a show again, to ask somebody if they ever fell in love in the summer. But, like, it's, you never know what that person's memory is or their thoughts of that song, and so where it goes, and I think it's going to be interesting. I don't know your guys' thoughts. It's going to be interesting to see if AI can grab onto that. If AI holds onto the soul in lyrics and holds onto the soul in a string bend, that's going to be the real interesting thing.
Oh, I know. You keep seeing stuff coming out and you're just like, why are y'all doing this? Was it the Dead Boys where they were trying to get the new singer to sing it? They wanted to go back and use AI to replace them with their dead singers' vocals, Steve Bader's vocals. And it's like, why? Like, the dude's dead. Like, let it rest.
Yeah. Jerry, that's my biggest geek out is the Grateful Dead, of all... things, but Jerry had so many runs in his voice of what he was doing in his life and his recreational uses, that like, how do you pick how you fit that in? Jerry playing with Wolf, in the early 70s and Jerry Garcia band, you'll never touch again. Yeah. And that where he recorded those, and that's, I think we were talking about it earlier today. I don't think you're ever going to go back and recapture Eddie Vedder in the 90s of where he was pushing those vocals out and could belt a whole stadium out with lyrics. You couldn't import that in AI wise and get that same feeling, because Stone and Mike are in that studio with him reading off that and feeding that, and Matt's playing drums to it, and I think AI can't replace the soul and the human spirit of a rhythm, right? Like, all this music goes back to tribal days, like, no matter who wants to say what, like, it's all tribal beats that we're all mimicking. It's all field chants that we're bringing in, that the humans can touch as their heart and their work,
Yeah, it's a tough part for, like, especially with us, because I do almost all of most of our instrumentations through me. So everything's clicked out. It's like, all right, we're going to click out the acoustic, go back, do drums, bass. So there are times where it's like, man, I'd love to one day capture that record of just like we're all in a room or just playing. And if it speeds up a little during the second verse, whatever, man. That's how the song goes,
Right. We've done that all of mine. They're layered where I go in and lay down first, and then people come in, but they're still hearing it. It's not a computer making those emotions up. Right. I think, I'm horrible on click track. My mind wanders where I start thinking like, oh, what's this? And then I vomit every time, it's a hard thing to record to click track. It is harder than people know to do, but it keeps, but I think, I don't know, but I imagine most session players, if they're really good, and probably you, when you're like, oh, there's that little bass groove I got there, I'll add a little hi-hat in there to match that, or like, this last one we're doing, this song that comes out Friday when Joey's playing guitar on it, this guy Joey Rowland's just unreal. Like, I didn't realize what he was doing when we were recording his solo, but he's got a B bender and a G bender guitar, so he's bending every way possible, but he did like a little step up to get ready for it to go into a solo that just blew the whole solo away to me, and I don't know, he was watching the drummer, because the drummer bass player in a room, I'm in a separate booth, they were feeding off of each other, and like what he was doing was telling the drummer he was going to go to a solo, but it's fucking phenomenal, you're like, oh, I catch what he's doing, this is awesome, and then, but I think, I don't know, I think AI will ruin everything of art, possibly, it can't mimic a paint stroke brush of an artist, it can't mimic a Picasso curve, it can't,
well, and
it can't do it.
I do think it's interesting, because as far as music goes, we had talked about it recently, but only as like a songwriting thing. I never really even thought about the fact that there's no way that it can mimic a human voice, how a human voice ages, or the kind of intensity that comes from somebody who may be having a slight mental breakdown while they're singing this song. Like that cannot be replicated.
Tell you, man, you think that. But did you listen to the AI created George Carlin stand up?
I did not. No.
No.
Oh man, you want to talk about like...
Is it disturbing?
Yeah, like it is basically George Carlin riffing on stuff that's happening now. And there's a few things here and there that are telltale signs, but we're pretty early into this.
Yeah.
But it was just kind of like, they're even doing the same kind of lifts in his voice. Like they just went and fed all of his stand-up stuff into it and was just like, now you're going to do this. And they captured the end of his career like old guy voice. And it was just like, oh man, like this is... You can still tell enough that you're like, okay, this isn't real, but it's close enough to where you're like, dude, there are points where if you just did this one bit, you wouldn't know.
Yeah.
And you're just like, damn.
Do you think because you know him? Like I'm a huge Richard Pryor fan, right? Like Pryor to me is, like just the best. I mean, like you never have Eddie Murphy, you never have Arsenio Hall, you never have all these comics that lived through some of the stuff he lived through. And when you read Richard Pryor's book, your heart broke for him, right? Like you realize how dark his humor is because of what he lived through. But like I wonder, that's a replication of somebody's art already compared to the initial creation. And I think that's what we're talking about is like, does it change the creation? Can it mimic it or can it create it? That's what I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's more of just applying it's more mathematical. It's like we're taking the formula and we're just changing the variables to now. Like I grew up in my house, my mom had 3 8-tracks and one of them was Richard Pryor stand up. So,
love it. Yeah.
I wasn't listening to the Carpenters a lot, nor was I listening to Steve Miller Band, but damn it, I played that a lot.
Well, I have a question now.
I got to stay with my dad. Oh, yeah.
You guys are talking about this, and now I'm like starting to freak out a little bit. Isn't that what we already do in pop music? We just break it down, change the variables, and spit it back out. Like that's already happening.
Yeah, in the editing of it, you think? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Pop artists, it's not going to change. Already, it's all just the same 5-10 guys going in a room, and there's like they come up with a catchphrase like, "That's it, we're done."
Exactly. Well,
yeah, I don't know. Did you watch that documentary they did on Taylor Swift lately and the producer she has on it, and just how many albums he's touched?
Oh
and
yeah, that
his art process. That dude's phenomenal, man, and just changed Taylor's career. And just changed.
It's Antonoff. I can't remember his first name, but
there's a lot of producers that bands that wouldn't be who they are without producers. Let me look at Def Leppard and what's his face.
Yeah. Oh yeah, with what's Shania Twain's husband. Yeah.
So they say they wouldn't be the band that they are if they hadn't had that producer.
Well, then you had Linda Perry, like most female singers for years, and it's like, oh gosh, why is she doing this to us? But like she has that ability to write the really bad earwig songs. Yes, Jack Antonoff. I can't remember Jack, but that's the dude, man.
That's who it was. Yeah.
He is like everywhere, and he has written and produced for people. The dude he's got things like
that's just gold, man. Yeah.
I know he's like the dude from Weezer on steroids. Like, this is stupid.
Well, what I was thinking about to your question, Kim, was he was talking about how most producers will layer microphones and backing vocals, and he broke down how he does Taylor's backing vocals, and it was genius, right? But he's using technology, but it still takes that creative mind.
Yeah.
And it took him. The story he's talking about is he lived at home till he was 27, just doing music every night in his basement, probably listening to a million records, and so I think it's going to sound super corny, but it's that rhythm that we found millions of years ago when somebody picked up a drum around a fire after a hunt. In my mind, a computer will never be able to mimic that. I mean, like one of the best shows I ever got to see, and I've seen it in humans, was I saw Rage Against the Machine at Red Rocks, and I've never seen 9,000 people move to a rhythm like that show. I mean, it was 1996, but like we look back and Zach was singing and Tom was just killing a solo and just 9,000 people in a constant flow. There was no metronome, there was nothing to say, but none of those people missed a beat to that. And I think that can never be replaced by a computer. And I'm probably wrong because I'm getting old and in my lifetime I won't see it, but I don't think you can tie into that what Rage did when Rage came out and tied into that youth. I mean, like just like the Ramones, like you brought up, and those bands did. I don't see it happening. I don't know. I mean, Dylan, could AI replicate what Dylan wrote? I don't know. I mean,
well, and also, but truly believe you're not going to lose the people who would, especially for people like us. No one who comes to like our live shows are going to be like, you know what? They made some AI insert band, because they're not doing it for like the they're not into music for the albums are great, but usually those are the kind of people like, I want the album after I've seen the band, and the album is just a way for me to hear that song, like, man, remember when we saw him here and this happened?
Yeah.
You're losing the people who are just like, I listen to radio or it's background music, I don't care, it's just some noise to fill in my day. But at the end of the day, it's like, good. The people it's really gonna crush are a lot of the upper mid-level bands that are just like, oh, I'm gonna go out on Saturday night, they'll make the shows more enjoyable. I mean, how many times do you go out to a show and half the audience is like, until they do the hit, or talking over the band despite the fact there's a PA, and you're just like, dude, can y'all stop? And so you're gonna lose those people, because they're like, well, I can listen to the AI thing, and they're gonna bring a television and stick it in the room, they're going to play the AI show.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that you bring up somebody like sitting there singing and talking. That's, you talked earlier about the difference in 20 years of being out of music. You know, like 20 years ago, you did not sing along to a band when they were singing, right? Like, and that's been the thing I've really had to face this year is people were over trying to power your vocals, you know, or at shows where everybody's singing and they're not even listening to the audience because it's about their experience being there, which I really struggled with. But then I realized like that's their experience they want, you know, and that's the moment they're feeling. And that's been one I've had to get used to because when I was playing earlier, nobody knew your songs ahead of time unless they had your tape or, you know, when you came to town, you know. And then the other one is that's changed in technology that I've noticed is cell phones at shows. You know, when you look out and there's 20 cell phones sitting there, you know, looking at 30 and you're like, are they giving me a bad review? Are they saying they love it? You know, and you won't know till you're off your set, but you can't let your mind wander into that.
Right.
You know, and that's old man blues that I'm singing now about shows, but like you start sitting there like, oh shit, is my zipper undone? You know, like is my shoelaces untied? Like, you know, like is there something I'm missing here?
I'm all for. I don't mind if people sing. If people come to the show and they knew one of our songs, we all have to sing along. That's fine. I was more concerned with anyway, last night, Billy was going to the refrigerator. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, there's a lobby. There's this place. Go there. I mean, we went and saw one that stands out the most. We went and saw Yola. And they're doing this thing where they all gather. They have like the two acoustics and they gather around a mic. And I think there's someone like maybe with a fiddle or something.
Yeah, there's like 4 or 5 people in her band and they all
around the condenser
a cappella number.
And this guy's dude, I got my fucking boat out. We're going to the land. Finally, everyone's like, hey man, do you mind? And even with like there's a lobby, like you can go stand out in the lobby and tell this dude about your boat. Yeah. The fact that I know that this dude just got his boat out of storage before this show is not something I should know coming out of this concert. And it's just that whole like.
Well, here's the challenge though, right? Like how do you define that? What if somebody's fallen in love and they're talking about how much they love each other at a show? Like who's to say what they're talking about? You know, I don't know. You know, I mean, how many?
But
you
know,
don't know. But yeah, I think it's
As a music fan, can't they just shut up and make out? Like.
I get it. That's a good point. I'd rather see that than hearing about somebody's boat. Yeah, you know. I mean, so it's a good point. You know, but it's dance a little bit. You know, I mean, that's the. You know,
I have been known to turn around.
I'd rather see somebody put energy to dancing at one of my shows than talking about their boat. I agree.
Yeah.
You know, and so, but.
That's always the best when people dance, isn't it?
And I go to like all genres, so we've gotten to the point where it's like, it's crazy to me that the best behaved fans, and it could be that the music's too loud for them to talk, but you go to like metal shows and people are quiet, they're watching the stage.
And they're respectful.
They're like, kind of not even anything, just like nodding along to everything. Then you're like, dude, I'm going to go see this killer singer-songwriter guy, and it's like, anyway, dude, afterwards we should hit a bar. And you're like, it's him in an acoustic, dude, just stop.
Yeah, I think, man, those metal fans are intense about their music. I mean, more than any other genre I've ever seen. I mean, you look at like merch sales at those shows, you look at that business model of metal, it's nuts compared to the genre I'm in. You know, I mean, it's a legit deal, you know, and man, but you have to play to be in that field. You can't hide a note in that stuff, you know. Can't, you know, I mean, it's
you missed the solo.
You can hide a lot in acoustic. Exactly. I mean, you go back to Spinal Tap, like it seats at 10, it's at 11, you know, I mean, so like, you know, I mean, that, but like, it's, and I'm not a metal guy, I don't follow it that much, you know, but like, I know the friends of mine that I played with in high school that are in it are killing it. They have their turnouts at those shows are what I can't believe.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at their ticket sales and their merch is just through the roof, you know, and so, and their music doesn't age, you know, I mean, that's the thing is Metallica still gets them on stage and kills it, you know, and you know, like you said, there's not people talking. They know every word, and that has aged very well in music.
People are angry at all ages. True. So, you know, angst never really goes away. Yeah. You just change what you're grumpy about.
You change the topic your angst angst survives in. Yeah.
Like, now I'm angry about this. And it's like, good. It's like, just get grumpy. All right, man. Well, we're getting close to the hour mark, and so we're going to bring it down. I don't know if you read the message, but we do have our new final question of the pod. Give us a recommendation of one book, one podcast, and one album or artist we need to check out.
Man, I didn't read that, so this is going to be non-rehearsed, which is not like me. So we'll see if I bomb this.
I like it.
Yeah, well, the first one's a book to read, music-wise, or
any book, a book that you feel like, man, people should read this. Not be the last, but a recent book. I mean, you don't want to go like Moby Dick.
Man, I'll tell you the book that really made me think. Man, holy cow! I love to read, and I'm.
Me too.
It's I'll try to think of
And Sam works at a library.
I'll tell you the book that I think. Just read the first half of it, because the second half of it to me is a bunch of bullshit he should have left out. It was Bruce Springsteen's book is brilliant.
Oh yeah.
Like of how when he got started is just like he's going to Colombia and has to borrow somebody's car, and he gets on the tollway and he doesn't even have a quarter to his name to get on the tollway, and the toll person lets him pass through without paying. He would have never had that meeting, and he had to borrow somebody's acoustic guitar to get there. And you think about Bruce's career, I mean, that whole book is so well written on the beginning half of what he went through to make it, and where he got what he did, early. The later part gets to when he has all of his money and everything's, second wives, third wives, kind of stuff. But the E Street, where he comes in, and E Street for me, I think for every artist, and I have to remind this of, and somebody has a really great saying is, you're going to have more down days than you have up days in music. That's just the reality of it. You're going to have more failures than you have successes. And I think Bruce's book teaches you just to keep fighting. You're in that fight, and if you believe in it and you push, I would say that for any artist to read. I'll skip aside the political books I read, because nobody ever wants to talk about those, and reviews of things like that. But I think that's one to definitely look at. And a podcast, I don't remember the name of it, but there's a guy, I love this podcast he does. I'll have to send it to you to remind myself. But he's him and his wife both worked in the CIA, and they both got out of the CIA and did a podcast. It's called like The Conventional Spy or something like that. But it's brilliant because they pick a political subject or like a country at war, and they talk about it from both of their perspectives from working in the CIA. And it's so brilliant of how they do it, and like it's they're arguing with each other, but they're very intelligent people having these arguments about their ideologies and and like it's interesting to see what they go through in their careers, and they've retired, and now they're looking back at their careers and bringing that in. And that's the one. I don't really listen to a lot of other podcasts other than stuff like that I like to geek out on going down the road that, I think there's some that I don't agree with that I still listen to try to get somebody else's perspective. Yeah. But I think podcasts that challenge your mind are really good too. But yeah. And then what was the last one?
I got an artist or album.
Yeah. I just watched his movie, and anybody that hasn't watched it, I'll say to watch it, is Guy Clark's movie. It's it just came out, but they took his wife Suzanne's diaries and made a book of it, or a movie out of it. But I keep going back to Guy Clark every point of my career that I've been in. I just think for a guy that just did not give a shit about anybody else except for writing great songs, and literally like just wrote some brilliant songs for folks, and just I think no matter where you're at, you can listen to him, and he was so in tune with what life is as a process. He tied into that. So I wouldn't necessarily say one Guy Clark album compared to, I would say pick a handful of them. But, Texas Cooking is a great one, that I think everybody should listen to. That's just who I've been listening to a lot this last year as a challenge to myself of how to write songs and tell a story that has a beginning, middle, and end, that we kind of get lost in. I think Guy Clark did that well, and it was so written in that tragedy of West Texas and the oil fields there. And people surviving, and that they didn't have AC when he grew up. You think about what he did, but I would say Guy Clark because it's a tragedy. Towns is the same way to me. Towns Van Zandt, it's a tragedy of life that somebody captures. I think that's I'm not a big pop fan because I don't want to feel good when I listen to music about the sun's out and we're shooting sunshine out of our asses and growing dandelions. I don't want to hear, I want to hear the raw emotion. Me and you have talked a ton about books. Shakespeare's not written about the good of life. It's a tragedy of life, and we mimic that so much in music, you know? And so that I think that kind of, I mean, Steve Earle's in that category, you know, I mean, you really look at what Steve Earle's lived through, you know, and he writes about, you know, I mean, he's really lived. I think if I could nail it down to one song, I'll take it to the next level. And Steve Earle is, everybody should listen to Goodbye. You know, when he wrote Goodbye, it's him saying goodbye to drugs. You know, I mean, he's talking about going down to Mexico and getting those drugs and everything he goes through. That vulnerability in any music, I don't care what the genre is, that vulnerability to say, here's life, you know, like you're, you know, 12 hours, like we were talking about earlier, that vulnerability for you to write that, you could see that hurt in that guy's eyes telling you that story, you know, that you captured and rewrote. That's what music should be, is that vulnerability. You know, rap has a ton of vulnerability. I don't know if you guys are rap fans.
Oh yeah.
But you know, I mean, rap has a ton of vulnerability that nobody ever wants to talk about. You know, I mean, it really, you know, I mean, you listen to the story of what they're telling the stories of. They grew up in rap songs. It's brilliant songwriting.
Oh yeah.
You know,
I agree. Completely agree.
Yeah, you know, but yeah, I'd geek out forever. Sorry, I do that.
No, I think what's funny is I think we've actually brought that up before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still don't understand how many. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it's like pop music. A lot of there's pop rap that, like, yeah, it's not saying anything, but you get into like some of the really currently even and pioneer stuff. There's people coming out doing stuff now, and you're like, dude, they are telling stories that I wish I could write lyrics. I wish I'd written, like, I wish I could have written that song.
Yeah. I mean, look at like Kendrick Lamar, you know, I mean, that story, I mean, where he's, I mean, I don't know if you guys listen to him, but like the guy that robbed his dad at that chicken shop ended up becoming a record executives and signed him. I mean, like you can't make that shit up. You know, I mean, you're just switching genres of somebody else in a different neighborhood lived through the same shit and wrote a song. It just gets a label on it that nobody wants to talk about. You know, I mean, there's Waylon Jennings, they had the Highwayman up on stage one time and they were interviewing him. This older lady got up and she's like, Waylon, how do I get my grandson not to listen to rap? You know, and anybody that wants to Google that interview is amazing because he talks about how Waylon got fired from working at a radio station for playing too much, you know, Willie Nelson, or so whoever he was playing at the time that they thought was excessive. It was George Jones. He got fired for playing too much George Jones, you know, and then Waylon handled the best way Waylon could. He looked at the lady and he said, if your grandson starts listening to Willie Nelson, then you got a problem, but rap's not your problem. You know, and so it's great. It's Waylon's best, but like rap, if you can listen to it, and I'll give the story of when I wrote Road Song, that song that's doing so well for me right now. That morning I was actually listening to Wu-Tang and I was really listening to the way that Redman was laying down his lyrics. And when you listen to Road Song, it's not like any of my other songs where I'm laying down how the lyrics are going, because I was like, he's so in cadence with that beat. If I could mimic that in an Americana song, could I have something, you know? But I think that cross melting of listening to other artists and that vulnerability is where it's at. You know, I mean, obviously rap's got its own issues with some sexism and some things you can get into of some of the earlier stuff from the 90s and gangster rap, but the blues did the same thing.
Oh yeah, there's no genre that didn't.
You know,
I feel like that brings us to a really good point to end on, is there are no rules in the
there shouldn't be.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
no.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man.
Thanks, guys.
Oh man, thank you for coming in and talking to us.
This is fun, Ben.
Yeah.
All right, man. On that note, Kimberly.
Hopefully I kept you guys on track. Sorry about that.
Oh, we're good, man.
It's like a hurricane with my brain when we start talking about music. I love it. And none of it ended up being about me. So sorry.
No,
it's fine, man.
Yeah.
Well, you trust people get to hear a couple songs, so we'll be good. All right, Kim.
Bye.
All right, y'all. Thanks for listening to this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed listening to our conversation with Ben as much as we enjoyed having it, man. It was a lot of fun. I mean, for someone we didn't know that well, there was really no hangups, no like awkwardness. It was a lot of fun just to talk. So while we're at it, don't forget to follow Ben Garcia Music anywhere you can find him online. Be sure to tell friends about the episode, about the entire podcast. We'd appreciate you giving it a listen and helping spread the word so we can spread the word about all these fine artists we have come in. And that about does it, man. We'll see you in couple weeks with Jules from Shame on Me, who's working on some solo stuff. She's going to come in and talk to us. We're really looking forward to that. She's a wonderful vocalist. And to say goodbye, we're going to send you out with Ben Garcia's single Newtown. Catch you next time. Later.
Percy priest, looking for a priest, not one around. silk and satin. Remembering LaGrange and all that went down, a little strange. Oh no, but not strange. But that wind blew me on to Newtown. Flying south once again, oh, to leave behind a friend. I write a letter, but where do I begin? Stepping into Little Rock, oh, there ain't no time to talk. No, slow walk. But that wind blew me on to Newtown. Joey. But that wind blew me on to Newtown. But that wind blew me on to Newtown. Nashville never lend you a tune. Oh, I think we leave a little too soon. Oh no, but you leave blue. And if she'll let me, I'll head back to Mississippi. Oh, and be baptized in the blue. It's what a soul should do.